One of the most important ministries that we partner with here at AFR, American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, it's Mission Preborn. And so I want you to just, before we even get going, listen up. Let's pay attention. Let's get this cranking for today. We are talking about preborn ministry, where we have just about 1 million babies a year still being aborted in this country. Now, the good news is the pro-life movement has really come a long way in reducing those numbers. But we still have so much further to go. And we're talking about 42 million babies a year aborted worldwide, 42 million. But here in this country, around 1 million, it's 958,000 per the latest numbers. That's down from over 1.2 million, and the high was like 1.5 million back in the 90s. And so what is Preborn? Preborn is a ministry that works with hundreds of Christian pregnancy centers across the country to provide life-saving services such as ultrasound. Now, what this does is it gives these moms-to-be the ability to see what exactly is going on inside their tummy. And this can't be overestimated how important this is, what it does for women, how it helps shape their perspective going forward, because everyone else in their life is telling them it's a lump of cells, it's nothing, just get rid of it, it's inconvenient, and this changes that. The ultrasound allows the mom to hear the baby's heartbeat and see the formed baby, to see what's going on in there. The centers provide mothers who choose life maternity and baby clothes, diapers, car seats, counseling, and so much more. And they do this free of charge. It's a ministry. It's a love offering. And it's helpful, and it changes lives. Preborn centers have counseled 340,000 women considering abortion. 73,600 babies have been saved. That's 73,600 babies have been saved. And 40,000 women have heard the gospel. And out of them, more than 28,000 have surrendered their lives to Christ. And if there's anything that we're trying to do here, it's that. That's what we're here for. Yes, we have the news and the politics and the commentary, and we have the culture, and we laugh and we enjoy ourselves here. And you're at home at American Family Radio. This is the tip of the spear of what we're trying to do, what we aim to be doing and found doing when God returns for us. The church, we're to be ready. We're to have our candles all ready to go, our lamps full of oil. We're supposed to be ready. And this is one way that we do that. So we're asking you for a gift of $28. That provides one woman seeking an abortion a free ultrasound, and it gives the mom the opportunity to choose life for her baby. $140 provides 5 free ultrasounds. This will reach 5 women with the message of life. And I know that we have quite a few people in our audience who that is not a big deal for them to do $140 to provide those ultrasounds. Our goal this go round is to save 2,000 babies. 100% of your donation goes directly to the pregnancy centers that provide the ultrasound, so there's no overhead here. There's nothing to worry about like some of these foundations where you got only 15% of what's being donated going to the cause they told you to give for. Not so here. 100% of it goes to these ultrasounds. Here's what you can do. I need you to call 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. Or go to afr.net and donate there. You know me, I'm all about the online donations, and I love to be able to click through. Less than 5 clicks, I want to be done and on my way to my next thing that I want to do online. And that's how it is here. You are not going to be burdened with a lot of drama. You're going to get through and be able to donate any amount you choose. $28 is what we're asking for. And for those who are willing to go the extra mile, $140 to get 5 ultrasounds done and save 5 babies and speak the gospel to 5 women. So 877-616-2396 or afr.net. Now, here's who's on the program today. We are, I love it when we have our fun and fantastic guests, and today is no different. We're going to be speaking with Ellis Grossman. It's been a bit since he's been on the show, and you know, he and I always have fantastic conversations about the Middle East, and this is no different because we have a real argument going on between the left and the right, if you will, or I should say most people who just believe we should be at war everywhere, and Donald Trump, who ran on decreasing the number of troops that we have stationed abroad in these endless wars that are not authorized by Congress, by the way. So Ellis is going to come on and update us on the situation in the Middle East, and we're going to be able to chat with him about that. And we are also going to be talking about Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, he had a moment on one of the Sunday shows, and he was talking about negotiating with the Democrats. And then he kind of let slip And I don't know if it was intentional, like it's a warning shot across the bow, or if it was more of a, this is what's going on and he's sharing it and he didn't realize how much he actually shared. But suffice it to say, Lindsey Graham has exposed that there's a bit of a, it's not a bit, it's a war going on with the Republicans over whether or not we should be drawing down in the Middle East. In conjunction with that, because, a lot of constituents of both parties make money off of us being at war in the Middle East continually. And when we start talking about pulling out, they look at their bottom line and realize they're going to make less money. And so they start pressuring their counterparts, senators and people in the House that they basically own. Lindsey Graham should have one of those racing car shirts that shows everyone who donates to him so that we would know who really owns him instead of the constituents that he serves. And he's actually basically thrown out this, it's an idea, but I think it's the truth, that in exchange for not drawing down troops, the Senate will protect the president from impeachment, because the House is going to bring it. The Democrats are not going to be able to resist the urge to try to impeach President Trump, even though I hope they know I'm going to be actually praying, because the precedent is there in the Bible, and we're going to talk about that here in just one second, where David prayed for his enemies to be vanquished. He prayed for the Lord to crush his enemies under his feet. That's what we got to be praying for, that we would have justice, that justice would prevail, and that the truth would win out, and that wrongdoers would be punished, which means almost any person you think about that they're putting up as their potential front runners, they all have skeletons hanging in the closet. Some of them, their skeletons are out of the closet, riding around with them in their town cars. If impeachment is the order of the day, then so be it. They can impeach President Trump. They can try it, and then we can impeach their president. They'll win again, unfortunately, and then it will be their turn. So we'll get into that audio, and I'll let you hear. It's kind of stunning that Lindsey Graham would even let fly on national television that perhaps they're trading the shutdown support for protection from impeachment, when he should be saying they're supporting the president because the wall is needed and because there's no other way around this. If we don't have a physical barrier, we don't have a country, because these people want to get in here. They want a piece of that fantastic Trump economy that the Democrats are so busy trying to act as if it doesn't exist. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Right now, I want to go to our daily confession. It's Psalm 52. And in Psalm 52, to set the table here, you've got David on the run from Saul. This is in the Old Testament. And you can find the kind of some background reading on this in 1 Samuel 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And what's happening is David is upright in the sight of his king and in the sight of God. He's gone out, and anytime Saul needed military might, David was at the head of that military might, commanding the Israeli troops, and the mighty men of valor would go out and they would vanquish every enemy, and they would kill everyone. I mean, they were just unmatched in their military superiority against their enemies. Now, they weren't going around performing just random conquests. They would go out, and David would say, God, do you want me to go down this hill and strike these people with the edge of my sword? And God would say yes, and then he would. He would say, God, should I go and, follow these marauders to take back what they've stolen from us? God would say yes, and he would go and he would take back everything that was stolen from them. Over and over again, David, at the behest of Saul, often would go and vanquish the Philistines specifically, and anyone else who came against them. And in the midst of all of that, anytime David wasn't fighting and risking his life, Saul had his spear out and was trying to pin him to a wall. Saul knew that David was the heir apparent to the throne, not any of Saul's children, not his offspring, but David, the son of Jesse. And he knew that David had favor with the Lord because of his military record, 0 losses. So he would try to kill him. Well, while David was on the run, he took refuge with one of the priests, and that priest gave him showbread, which was the holy bread. And that's a whole nother, we could do a whole segment on that. But David was bold in his assurance that he had favor with God and that God would care for him. He also this priest gave David this sword, the same sword that was Goliath's sword, the one that David killed with the smooth, small stone when he was a boy. So he gives him this sword because David's got nothing to defend himself with. And David lied he lied to the priest and said, I'm here on behalf of Saul, instead of saying I'm running from Saul. And so the priest gives him this stuff and he goes on. And so you've got Doug or however his name is pronounced, and he's an Edomite. And he goes and tells Saul, look, it's these priests who, the house of Ahimelech, they're the ones who have saved David. They're the ones who have hidden him away from you and given him bread and given him Goliath's sword. And they're allowing him to evade you. And so at first, King Saul says, you know what, you're going to, my guards, I want you to go put every priest and every member of their house, even their women and children and animals, to death because they did this and they did it to spite me. I'm not sure. It doesn't really say whether or not they explained or if Doug explained that the priests were told by David that he was on business on behalf of Saul and that he was in a hurry. But regardless, Saul had no qualms about ordering his guards to kill priests. Now, the priests are they're innocent here, but they did help David, a man after God's own heart. And you've got the guards who are like, nope, we ain't slaying any, no, not for you. We're not slaying priests for you. So Doug goes out and does it. This Edomite man goes and kills all 85 of the priests, all their family, everybody, just burns everything to the ground. And so when David hears about this, in Psalm 52, he writes, why do you boast in evil, O mighty man? The goodness of God endures continually. Your tongue devises destruction. Like a sharp razor, working deceitfully, you love evil more than good, lying rather than speaking righteousness. You love all devouring words, you deceitful tongue. God shall likewise destroy you forever. He shall take you away and pluck you out of your dwelling place and uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous also shall see and fear and shall laugh at him, saying, here is the man who did not make God his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and strengthened himself in his wickedness. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever. I will praise you forever because you have done it. And in the presence of your saints, I will wait on your name, for it is good. So he is extraordinarily saddened that his actions led to the death of these 85 priests. And he doesn't go to God and complain or why did you allow this to happen? He just goes to God and he starts off by castigating and chastising Doug. But he's talking to God. So he's not gossiping. He's not complaining. He's not backbiting. He's actually talking to his father. And he's pouring out his heart about the wickedness and evil that he's just seen done. But he knows that God is the deliverer and God will ultimately control and win out in every situation. And that he's ordering everything for David's good. And even though he made a mistake in lying to the priests, he knows God will make all things right. We should know that too. Let's send our complaints to the Almighty and allow him to make all things right. When we get back, we're going to have Nicholas Grossman. Stay right there.
This month marks 46 years of Roe v. Wade. The Ministry of Preborn is seeking heroes who will partner with them to give the gift of life to babies in crisis. How? By providing free ultrasounds. When an abortion-minded mother sees her baby on ultrasound and hears the heartbeat, she's 80% more likely to choose life.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
Would you join Urban Family Talk and the Ministry of Preborn in helping to give life to 2,000 babies this January? For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, dial 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. Or visit afr.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Do you remember when you were in high school, some of the cliques? I remember there was a group in our high school who didn't like the kids who did well. They were suspicious that they got more breaks than the others. It's really hard to believe, but it's true. Some people will not like you because you have more recognition, or you've accomplished more things, or your life is different than theirs, or because your life and witness are disturbing their agenda. We tend to think the favor of God means there's no hassles, and that we can just serve God in this sort of ideal protected cocoon where we won't feel any heat or pressure. As I read my Bible, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes the favor of God brings opposition. In Acts chapter 4, the Church of Jesus Christ is experiencing explosive growth. People are coming to Christ by the thousands. However, it's really causing a little bit of a stir. They're upsetting the religious establishment. The priests and the Sadducees are saying, hey, look, we're losing our power base. These people are more popular than we are. So they decide to come after them. Listen to Acts chapter 4, verse 3. And they arrested them and put them in custody until the next day, for it was already evening. They're being blessed, and yet bad things happened to them. God was favoring them, and yet the religious leaders were rejecting them. So you see that we cannot look to the response of people as the barometer for determining the favor and blessing of God. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Keep your eyes on Jesus and keep your heart pure. Pursue faithfulness, and no matter what others say or even do, you'll experience the favor of God. That much is guaranteed.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome to the program. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com, urbanfamilytalk.com, and American Family Radio's website is afr.net. And we have fantastic content for you on all of those channels. So hit the subscribe button and like us on Facebook. We're still there. If you're not getting notifications or you're not aware that our page is still up, well, shame on Facebook, but you can fix that by clicking Get Notifications. That does help, but it doesn't guarantee anything. So my recommendation is stay subscribed to our individual websites, because that is where we do not have to worry about algorithms keeping you from seeing our content. So thank you for being with us today. Welcome back from the weekend. I don't know if about you, I'm energized, I'm ready to rumble. And because of that, I'm really excited about speaking to our frequent guest. We haven't chatted with him in a little bit, Nicholas Grossman. He's a professor of international relations at the University of Illinois. Nicholas, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Hi, Stacey. Thanks for having me.
Hi. It's good to talk to you at this particular time because aside from the illegal immigration and the border wall fight with the shutdown, the other big issue that everyone is kind of discussing is the president's campaign promise to draw troops down in the Middle East and what that means for the situation in Syria, our allies, the Kurds, et cetera, et cetera. What can you tell us to help us understand what's going on here?
Well, at the moment, it's pretty up in the air. So just as of a few days ago, the president had instructed the military to begin withdrawing, to pull all of what are about 2,000 American troops that were in Syria out of the country. And this had triggered some debate. There were some people that were very pleased with it, some that disagreed with it strongly. The Secretary of Defense resigned over it. And then, as of today, now John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, has been going to allies in the region and assuring them that the United States is withdrawing based on certain conditions, in particular the defeat of ISIS and the protection of the Kurds that the U.S. has been working with to fight against ISIS. And the president now seems to be leaning in that direction also. So it looks like maybe the U.S. isn't actually withdrawing, but it is still up in the air, still not totally certain.
Okay, now here come the questions. And I know you're prepared for this because you're a professor, so you're ready to bear with me here. But it's not just me. I have had numerous online kind of conversations with people, kind of back channel, and everyone has some of the same questions. And the first one is, without a military authorization to be at war in Syria, why would anyone, Republican or Democrat, support us keeping troops there, as opposed to Congress giving the authorization and kind of outlining what our strategy is and when we would be pulling out and going in that direction, especially since this is a campaign promise for Donald Trump to get out of there?
So that's a fantastic question. The United States wars abroad in general, all the operations against terrorism in various countries, including Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, all have been officially authorized under what's called the Authorization of Military Force, which was originally passed by Congress right after September 11th. So it's pretty open-ended, but it says that it's legal to go after anyone who is affiliated with the people behind it, but it's pretty much a stretch to say that current stuff going on in Syria or Iraq are directly affiliated with the people who are behind the September 11th attacks with Al-Qaeda.
Right.
While there are some Al-Qaeda there, certainly not everybody. So it's not really legal. The answer to the question is, since it's not really illegal either, in many ways Congress doesn't want the responsibility. So the president has been deciding it one way or the other with Bush, Obama, and now Trump. And this way Congress can look at it and say, you know, my name's not on it. I won't in a future campaign, if it goes bad, have to say, oh, I was the one who authorized that. I voted for it. But also, if it goes well, I won't get any credit. The president will get all the credit. So Congress has been largely punting on this for now almost 2 decades. You can arguably say back to the 70s. And as a result, presidents have accrued more power. So really, that's a great question, because the answer is it's not totally legal, but Congress doesn't seem interested in taking the risk, the personal political risk, of making it totally legal or saying it's totally illegal either.
It also reflects the shift in political ideology for the Democratic Party, which used to be completely opposed to wars and entanglements abroad unless we were directly impacted, like someone had actually, you know, hit our troops abroad or something like that. And now we have both parties that are pro-war. And this was something that it's kind of evolved, but a lot of people call Hillary Clinton a neocon. A lot of people had problems with President Obama's use of drones, and, you know, kind of instead of interrogating people or trying to get information, he would just send drones and kill them. And, you know, if an American citizen errantly was, you know, involved, which I kind of didn't care about that particular case myself, but the idea was that Democrats are the ones who usually oppose these kinds of things, but they're in favor of it too. And so I guess that the follow-on to that, Nicholas, is what about the troops that we have over there that are dying, number one, and number two, I mean, what exactly does our 2,000 troops, that's not a lot of troops, out of all the troops that are there and all of the mercenaries that are there, we routinely just wipe out, the Russian mercenaries, et cetera, what does our little involvement there of 2,000 troops really matter when so many other troops and forces from other countries are in the region as well?
So I think your instinct is right that they're not able to shape the outcome. They're not able to decide it themselves or impose their will on the area. What they are able to do is assist the Kurdish forces, and there are a lot of practical things that the United States can do that the different local militias can't. For example, there are U.S. Special Operations Forces. They're in communication with U.S. aerial surveillance, so, you know, drones or even satellites, to find out the location of various things, to target missiles specifically, and that's something that the local forces, the militias, couldn't do. So that makes them a lot stronger.
Okay.
Also, by the U.S. being there, it keeps everybody out. So Turkey, Russia, Syria, Iran might all have designs on the territory there, but at the moment, they know that if they try to launch military operations, they could easily end up killing Americans, and that would result in all sorts of diplomatic and potentially military problems for them, and so they are deterred from doing it. So by the U.S. being there, it helps the forces that are fighting ISIS continue to finish them off. There are a few pockets of territory that ISIS still has, and the group has transitioned more or less back to being like an insurgency. So they're not gone, but they're not holding territory anymore except for a few parts. So it helps fight against that, and also it strengthens the local areas that have been allied with the United States and in general have been more pluralistic than many of the other areas in the region, and keeping that part from being conquered from any direction.
Okay. All right. So I absolutely see the sensibility in what you've just shared. But I also, I think it's kind of crazy, just personally, that we need to keep 2,000 troops there just so basically it's like reputational might. We have 2,000 of our people there. So a lot of people who would normally do anything they wanted, run roughshod over the nation or over the Syrian country, what's left of it, or they would take it over for themselves. They don't do it just because we have troops there. But we also have just billions of dollars going into the Middle East. And while we're doing that, we have our southern border where we can't get $25 billion for a wall. Now we're spending way more than $25 billion a month in the Middle East. So for people who are more concerned about the other issue, which I know you're not here to discuss that, but the people who are more concerned about that issue would naturally look at our involvement in the Middle East and say, we could draw down someplace, find someplace to draw down because we are too involved there. How do you counter that? And how do you, in essence, change my mind that it's not time for us to continue to be there? Kurds notwithstanding, I understand that Turkey wants to run them over, and I get there's a lot going on.
So I have two responses to it. One is I think it's kind of a false choice in that there's no guarantee that, say, money from the Middle East would go towards whatever somebody wants it to go towards, specifically domestically.
True.
You know, it could end up going towards a program that you hate or paying down debt or, who knows what. So I would rather say if anything is a worthwhile priority, then we should prioritize it. We shouldn't make them trade-offs at the top. There are other places we can cut spending, raise taxes, other ways borrow money if it's important. So the big question is then, like you asked, is it important for the United States? And that one, I think there's a really good debate around. The argument for staying is that we don't want to leave a power vacuum, and kind of like when Obama withdrew from Iraq, that there was a power vacuum that ISIS could step into. If you turn back the clock a little more, when the U.S. helped the Afghans throw the Soviet Union out of Afghanistan in the 80s, then left it alone, and the result was the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and then September 11th. You can even see kind of a similar thing happening in Libya, where Obama and other NATO countries helped remove Gaddafi, and now the country is kind of sliding into chaos where they're leaving it alone. So those places are very attractive for international terrorists. So I'd say probably the best argument is because letting it fall to these types of forces could then lead to the U.S. having to go back in just in a worse position, kind of like the United States had to go back into Iraq and Syria, or back into Iraq in particular, to fight ISIS starting in 2014. The counter-argument is that the U.S. can't really, with 2,000 troops, accomplish all that much, that the local forces there, and that includes, say, Iran, are there permanently. The United States, everybody knows, will leave at some point. In that case, kind of like you can see in what is now 18 years of war in Afghanistan, that just continuing to throw money, throw resources at it isn't improving it. So if that's the case, if it's going to withdraw without success, might as well do it now. And I think really there's a good argument from both of those. I mean, I think you can tell I lean more towards keeping it there, being a counterweight to Russia and Iran to do right by the Kurds, to fight ISIS. But it's not like these 2,000 could do miracles on their own. And I wouldn't want the United States to do something like, send 30, 40,000 or like a peak Iraq 100-something thousand troops.
Okay. So I have like a million questions off of that answer, but let's try to keep it specifically on this subject. So can you tell the listeners and myself why it is that whenever we come out of some area in the Middle East, that Russia tends to exert a poor influence on there, which increases terrorism? Because the Russians don't like terrorism. They don't want terrorism in their country. So why would their presence, without the presence of the United States, result in more terrorism or an increase, re-rise of ISIS, et cetera, et cetera?
So I don't really think Russia or Turkey are prioritizing ISIS. That Russia might say that, and that sounds good, but a lot of times when they're talking about terrorists in Syria, they mean other people that are fighting against the government. And what's really neat is you can go online and there are maps, for example, of where there's been military activity, and you can see where Russia's bombing, and it's all in areas like Aleppo and other cities where there have been other parts of the rebellion, and they've dropped 1 or 2 bombs against ISIS, but really not much. Similarly, Turkey is more interested in fighting the Kurdish militias that the U.S. was working with because some of those have links to people that the Turkish government calls terrorists in Turkey. And the United States then is in a position of trying to keep the two of them apart. But Turkey does not really plan on going after ISIS either, which means that It would be something, unfortunately, the downside risk is it could be something like after the U.S. withdrew from Iraq, the local forces are being oppressive towards the people living there, and they decide it's worth fighting, and they'll make common cause with even some awfully bad people, kind of like ISIS, or before that, like Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So it's almost like we're trying to avoid a third Iraqi insurgency.
Well, what about people who are saying
groups
that
like Russia or Turkey probably won't keep it down themselves?
Okay, so but what about people who are saying that what we're doing is we're leaving ourselves in a powder keg, which when it erupts, it's going to, then we're going to be involved, and we'll be in like World War III when people start actually overrunning the kind of the piece that you've been discussing. It's kind of like it's a wartime environment, but it's kept within the bounds of reason because America is there, that influence is not going to continue to be present, and our little 2,000 troops and our, reputational might isn't going to be enough to stop this what's coming, which is Turkey is planning on going in there and wiping out the Kurds.
I think that's a really good point. That's the question of what would it take the United States to protect the Kurds long term? So if there are all these people around that are waiting to attack, even if the U.S. can hold them off, how long can that go on for? I don't know the answer to that. And also, I think a good point that it brings up is a big risk of what if one of those countries attacks anyway? Is the U.S. really going to get into a fight with Turkey, a NATO ally, over, what is, in that case, right on the border of Turkey? Even if the U.S. is siding more with the Kurds, would it, really want to go to war with an ally like that? I think probably no. The unfortunate part is that no matter what happens, the U.S. is involved. This is something I think a lot of times each president comes to office, and Bush, Obama, and now Trump have all gone into office saying that they want to reduce America's presence in the Middle East, and stuff happens and they get pulled in. That the United States is so linked up in so many ways with relationships with Israel, with Saudi Arabia, with various oil companies, other business interests, military interests, so many bases throughout the region, that if there anything big starts happening in the Middle East, the United States is in, whether we want to be or not. It's just a question of how would we go about preventing that, ideally, and if not, handling it as best as possible.
Nicholas, kind of depressing, dude. You're not bringing me a lot of joy with this conversation, because I'm one of those people who wants to see us bring a little bit of it down. Not all of it. I understand the realities, but as usual, no good solutions, but fantastic commentary, and your analysis and information is so needed right now. Thank you for coming on the show, Nicholas Grossman, Professor of International Relations at the University of Illinois. Thank you for your time today. Happy New Year.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you again soon. We will be back with more right after this. Don't forget to go to afr.net. We're looking for your donation of $28 or even $140 to support Mission Preborn. It's 877-616-2396 or afr.net.
A dear sister in the Lord, who is a writer for the AFA Journal, wrote an astonishing article about idols. In this article, she attests to the fact that if we are truly honest with ourselves, we will find things or people whom are more important in our lives than our relationship with God. Let's just say when I read this, I did my own soul searching and found a few. There are several passages in God's word where he tells us to not idolize things or people. Even the very first 2 commandments warns us about idolatry. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 21, John tells us to keep ourselves from idols. Idolatry is sin, and it could be your career, your marriage, your car, including yourself. John Piper says it best: sin is what you do when your heart is not satisfied with
I was drinking and I tried to stop on my own, but I couldn't, and it was a complete disaster for my family. I decided to make a change by coming to Teen Challenge. My life is transforming right now, and I have come to realize that God has a plan for me.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult to Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Donald Trump's America.
Today is day 17 of the partial government shutdown. Democrats in Congress say they won't fund the president's border wall, whether it's made of concrete or steel. The president said again Sunday he may strike out on his own to get it done.
I may declare a national emergency dependent on what's going to happen over the next few days.
House Democrat David Cicilline on Fox News Sunday said border security is the goal, which encompasses a lot.
Comprehensive immigration reform, we need to have additional personnel, we need to use technology. So we want to secure our border and respond to these challenges, but we want to do it in a way that works.
Senate Republican Susan Collins says the first order of business, though, is to reopen government. And on NBC's Meet the Press, she made a request of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I would like to see him bring the House-passed bills to the Senate floor.
But there's no guarantee the president will sign them, which leaves the shutdown length up in the air. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Yeah, it was pretty clear to me that we're never going to have a deal unless we get a wall as part of it. Dick Durbin's a reasonable guy, but he's not leading this parade. We're having to negotiate with people who want to abolish ICE, not support ICE. We're having to negotiate with people who see the Border Patrol agents gassing children rather than defending our borders as professional law enforcement officers. And we're negotiating with people who will give us $1 for the wall, even though it's immoral, and accuse all of us who support a wall as part of border security as racist. As long as the radical left is in charge, we're never going to get anywhere. The president will compromise, but he will not capitulate. So that's where we're at.
Right. That's where we're at. So did you listen to what he had to say there? Do you hear Lindsey Graham on there? So I fear that the Lindsey Graham that we all met or became reacquainted with or were introduced to during the Kavanaugh hearings, that fiery individual who came out on the side of what was right because he saw someone getting railroaded, I fear that Lindsey Graham will retreat back into the swamp or get dragged back into the swamp, and he'll drown, and the person who will remain is some iteration of the John McCain Lindsey Graham that we all knew as a rhino and someone who couldn't be trusted and someone who couldn't be supported. And so we all heard the interview with Nicholas Grossman. I respect him a great deal, and I understand the reasoning behind what he shared with us. And his article is over at Arc Digital, and I've just posted it in the comments over at the YouTube page, and I'll quickly throw that onto the Facebook page as well. You can read it. It's well thought out, and it takes into consideration the different factors that are at play here. And this is not an easy thing. It's not like anyone out there has an idea, a story, a plan, a group of ideas, a group of people, a council of, smart folk, whatever. There's nobody out there with the secret recipe to getting America out of the Middle East. And so when you look at it that way, you say, well, then what's the happy medium? How do we get out of there with our honor intact? Because the Kurds have helped us a great deal in the Middle East, and to leave them when we know that Turkey is planning on literally just wiping them out, that seems a little sketchy, don't you think? But on the other hand, if we had a planned withdrawal, then wouldn't that be something that we could get behind? And the idea again, I guess the older you get, the more you learn. We're sitting here discussing on national radio, just as calm as you please, Nicholas Grossman and me, how Congress has decided over decades that it is their standing policy, then rather than be held responsible for what happens in the Middle East, namely dead Americans, and, sometimes we feel like we have a huge grip on the terrorism and we're doing great, but really it's our intelligence agencies that keep that terrorism from coming here. It's not 2,000 troops in Syria who are wholly responsible for a lack of terror attacks here on the homeland, right? You know what I'm saying? So yes, I'm sure that plays a role. The more ISIS members they kill over there, the fewer of them come here and use our open border to get in and do terror. But we are still bringing in refugees from these countries, people who honestly hate America and they only want to come here to destroy it. And we're also bringing in lawful immigrants. And we have chain migration, where the person who came in originally under the immigration probably is as right as rain and would make a fantastic American, but all their relatives won't. So we have huge issues here. I also agree with what Nicholas Grossman said. He made a very logical, common sense point, which is when we make a comparison that one kind of funding, say funding for our troops in Syria or our involvement in Afghanistan, that if we drew that amount down, we would be able to fund, something else, say a wall at our southern border. He's right that that's ludicrous because we already have the 0.011% of the budget needed to fund our border wall, the $25 billion. We've already got that. I mean, that amount of money is already in the budget. It's not like that's hard for us to find or fund. It's the idea of having a wall to stop the illegal immigration that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are against, because they want radical population change here. They want demographic change. And once they've achieved that, if it's like a third world pit, they don't care, because Nancy Pelosi has enough money. She honestly has enough money. She will never experience the horrors of the things that regular Americans are facing, because they're just surrounded by people who live here illegally and don't speak English and don't care anything about speaking English. These people are hostile. We have a little encampment of them out here in West County. And if you go to certain places like the Walmart, you will see them there shopping. They'll run right past you. If you're walking down the aisle of the Walmart, they'll just push right past you, or they won't move out of the way when you're coming with your cart. You have to go back around the aisle and come back around. They don't speak English, and they're cursing you out in Mexican, Spanish, whatever their language is, Guatemalan, who cares? They're cursing you out right in the Walmart, which means, I mean, for me, I'm not in the Walmart very often anymore, because I refuse to have to deal with that drama. Pick one. You want to speak English, or do you want to check out in Spanish? Why should I have to pick anything? I'm an American. I speak English, and all of my business transactions are in English. Why should I have to choose whether or not I want to do English or Spanish at Walmart? And this is what Americans are dealing with by and large, but it's not the people who live in Nancy Pelosi's Napa Valley neighborhood. It's not the people who dwell around her multi-million-dollar estate, or the restaurant that she owns out there, or her winery, or any of the other areas. She doesn't have to put up with it. Even in a state like California, where 1 out of every 4 people there isn't illegal. 1 out of every 4 people. If you're walking down the street in California, 1, 2, 3, 4, that first one you picked, that's somebody who's there illegally. That's how much illegal immigration they have. No wonder they're a sanctuary state. It's like a nasty circle of doom that you can't get out of once you get in it. Like a merry-go-round that you get on, and the mean kid that hates your guts, he gets to spinning it and you can't get off. The only way off is if you let go, and then you're going to fly out and probably die and hit another piece of playground equipment. Yeah, that's California, the merry-go-round of evil. Beautiful, beautiful. But horribly corrupted by people who, honestly, it's about winning and power. It's not about what makes sense, or how to save lives, or how to even just preserve the lives that are already there. So Nancy's house is gated. There's a fence around it. The property is well protected. And if you look at the aerial view of it, you just think to yourself, I know that I say it's unreal, but I'm saying that because it's not like I don't know people who have mega houses. Our house is not small. It's not like I don't know people who live in homes where you walk in and it's so clean and so unrealistically, everything's so new and big and expensive. You're just walking around. It's like walking through a museum, but it's where people live. Their kids are running around playing. They got dogs all over the place. But this is how Nancy Pelosi lives. And so once you get into that environment and you're not interacting with anyone normal, you're not interacting with anyone who has 3 bedrooms and 1.5 baths and 1,500 square feet, or anyone who they're budgeting down to the penny and they have these goals and aspirations. And honestly, having an illegal immigrant force them out of a job or force their spouse out of a job means now nothing works in their life because they need every penny that comes in from both parties to make it work. She doesn't have people like that in her life other than probably the illegal immigrants who work the vineyard where and there are so many layers of people between her and that, it's not even funny. I mean, we know this. Yes, she may know some illegal immigrants who work for her in her staff that clean her home. But again, those illegal immigrants are being paid well by Nancy, well enough that they're living in, the areas of the illegal immigrant population where they're living what's considered, for them, it's upper class life. They're coming from countries where $1 a day is just outrageous money. So we don't even know from that kind of poverty and degradation here in this country because our poorest citizens are paid for and taken care of lock, stock, and barrel from the moment they wake up in the morning to the time they go to bed at night by us. So let's get to I can't let this show go by without talking about Lindsey Graham trading the shutdown support for protection from impeachment for the president. I honestly cannot believe that Donald Trump, he wrote a book about negotiation and all of that, is in this position. But Lindsey Graham kind of tells on himself. And I first want to have him, this bit of audio, he discusses, it's about 42 seconds of him discussing the daily influx of minors and the costs that are associated with that. So he has a tight understanding of what is at stake here and how many people are being harmed, not just Americans, but illegal immigrants themselves and the children who are being trafficked into this country. They're all being harmed in horrific ways, and Lindsey Graham wants to put a stop to it. But then we're going to talk about the trade-off he's proposing. It's number 6.
Why would you negotiate with somebody who calls you a racist if you want a wall, who gives you $1 for a wall when the Democratic Party supported $25 billion in the past? We're not going to negotiate with people who see the world this way. We'll negotiate with Dick Durbin, but I'm not going to negotiate with somebody who calls the Border Patrol agents a bunch of Nazis when they're trying to defend the border against a mob. These caravans have changed everything. The reason you need $5 billion now and not 1.6 is the border is deteriorating in terms of security. We've got 11,000 unaccompanied minors coming from Central America, and it costs us $750 a day to house these minors, and only God knows what they go through to get here.
So he sounds pretty ticked off about that, right? But all of the senators, all of them, one thing that they learn when they get there, if they don't already know it, is that you're never giving anything to anyone who's asking you for something without trading something for it. All of it's horse trading. And so what Senator Graham doesn't want is for the president to remove one troop from any place in the Middle East. He's entrenched there. Senator Graham is what some people like to call a neocon. I think a more accurate description is to say that he likes our involvement in the Middle East. He is of the worldview that any troops that we have there are preventing terrorism from coming here. It's not all nasty, mean, ugly motives behind it. I'm not saying he doesn't have a good kind of thought process behind it. You heard Professor Grossman. There's an argument to be made for being there. But what I am saying is that no true dyed-in-the-wool, true believer type of a person who understands what's at stake here with the southern border, our national sovereignty, and just having a country. Like, do you like having a country? That's the question we should be asking people at this point. Because if you like having a country that's run like a actual, first world type place instead of a third world 10-pot dictatorship, then you should be against illegal immigration. If you don't care about having a country and you living in a place that looks like America but operates like Guatemala, that's not an issue for you, then of course you're going to be for illegal immigration. But that shouldn't be something we should worry about with elected officials like Senator Graham. But it is. So here's I honestly, I can't believe this. So you've got Senator Graham admitting that, the shutdown, hanging tough with it, is pretty much conditioned upon President Trump not doing what he announced a week or so ago, or whenever it was that Mattis resigned, his chief of staff has now resigned. People are all upset about us removing troops from Syria, I mean, they're really upset. Mattis wouldn't resign over our southern border being wide open. Now, would he? Who's going to resign because the border's still wide open and we're not getting anything done down there? Nobody, because they don't care about it. They don't care about it the way we do. And that's, to me, that's hard to say. It represents, my statement just then represents a very sad and stark reality that really it's all of us American people. We're actually standing against our elected officials as well as the invasion at the southern border. I can't begin to express to you how much that depresses me, how much that hurts my physical heart to understand that we keep electing and sending to Washington, D.C. these individuals who actually don't care about maintaining America as not just an idea or a concept or an experiment, but an actual place with borders. It's just you and me, the regular folks. The elected officials don't seem to have a grip on it. So what he wants, what Lindsey Graham wants, is to stay in the Middle East. Now, you would need 20 GOP turncoats in the Senate, and you'd need a whole gaggle of them in the House to first advance a bill that would, end the shutdown with no border wall funding, and then pass the House, and then head on over to the Senate, and in the Senate, then clear that hurdle of 60. And then, of course, you'd still have to get to the president's desk, and then he wouldn't sign it, and then you would have to override that veto. So the bar is high. But when you tie it to keeping troops in the Middle East, then the purse strings start tugging. Those marionette dolls are going to start jigging out. They're going to start twerking for their lives because it's not really about the Middle East per se. It's about the interests in the Middle East that fund their campaigns, that pay for their second and third home, the ones that keep them in the halls of power, dressed in the $5,000 outfits, driving the $90,000 cars driven by someone else, the staffs of 20 and 30 people, all of that. The engine that keeps that going wants to see us stay in the Middle East with the same amount of fervor that it wants to see the border in the South remain wide open so illegal immigrants can pour in. Because that cheap foreign labor doesn't ask for breaks. It doesn't need benefits. It's not going to talk back. That cheap immigrant labor comes here and all it wants is just the bare minimum, anything above $1 a day, and they're good to go. Because anything that they don't get paid while they're working is covered by us, the taxpayers. If we're not on our knees about this issue, we're just talking, and there's no way I'm just talking. We got to continue to pray about this, that God's will would win out, and that we would see justice and truth and a return to order, not just in the Middle East where it concerns us, but at the southern border. If you're leaving us now, God bless you. Good evening from the Heartland. We'll be back after onenewsnow.com.
Urban Family Talk.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. In what was billed as a dramatic announcement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu used a primetime address to again dismiss a series of corruption allegations against him. Netanyahu said that it would be unjust for him to be indicted ahead of early elections called for April 9th. He also said he had been denied the chance to confront state witnesses in person. He offered to confront them on live television, saying, "What are they afraid of? What do they have to hide?" Police have recommended that Netanyahu be indicted in 3 corruption cases. Netanyahu has denied any wrongdoing and has said he would not give up his re-election campaign or resign his office if charged. The White House is not concerned about impeachment efforts from Democrats. Communications advisor Mercedes Schlapp made these remarks to Fox News Channel.
The Democrats want to keep their impeachment talk where we know there's no collusion, where we've been transparent and cooperative in the process. Look, that's a losing strategy for them. The American people want the Democrats, the president, the Republicans to work together to solve problems for our nation. That is what the president is focused on every day. If they want to use impeachment as their political maneuver, they can go and try, but let me tell you something, they will lose.
Meanwhile, President Trump plans to address the nation tomorrow night to make his case for border wall funding. One of the high-profile cases turned away by the Supreme Court today involves a murder and a Kennedy relative. Fox's Lillian Wu reports.
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel remains a free man now that the Supreme Court has announced it won't be taking up his case. This leaves in place a decision by Connecticut's highest court to throw out his murder conviction for the bludgeoning death of neighbor Martha Moxley half a century earlier when they were both 15. The Connecticut Supreme Court last year reversing itself and vacating that murder conviction for Skakel, who'd already served 11 years. The court finding Skakel's trial lawyer was so ineffective, his right to a fair trial was violated. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
An Uber driver charged with killing 6 people in southwestern Michigan in 2016 has made a surprise guilty plea. Fox's Jeff Manasso has more.
Just before lawyers and a Kalamazoo judge plan to pick a jury for accused murderer and Uber driver Jason Dalton, and there's a guilty plea in the 2016 shootings of 8 people in between passenger pickups. 6 victims died. Dalton admits to the shootings, telling police a devil figure on Uber's app was controlling him. Dalton now faces a mandatory life sentence for each of the 6 counts of first-degree murder against him. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A Pennsylvania high school student has been arrested over a Snapchat video with a threatening message. Fox's Steve Rappaport has that story.
Police say the video shows 18-year-old Jason Bowen firing multiple rounds from a semi-automatic rifle with a caption reading, "Training for Prom Walk." A criminal complaint also says a separate photo on Instagram shows a man resembling Bowen giving a thumbs up in relation to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. South Butler County schools went into modified lockdown Monday as a precaution. Authorities charging Bowen with terroristic threats and other counts. Defense attorney David Schrager says his client has no history of violence and simply made a joke that was in extremely poor taste. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Ford is recalling 410,000 pickup trucks, including 2015 to 2019 F-150s and 2017 to 2019 Ford Super Duty trucks, saying a faulty engine block heater is to blame. The water and contaminants may get into the block's heater cables connector, causing corrosion and fire. In final news this hour, a New Jersey woman is collecting discarded Christmas trees to feed to her kids, and by that we mean goats. Tammy Fulcher-Milloway tells USA Today it does a goat's body good.
The goats really like the pine needles as well as the bark. It's very good for them. It's natural roughage and it's good protein for them.
Milloway adds that even the pine needles keep goats warm. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today. And you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Let's solve this issue. Leader McConnell is correct to say we're not going to take up something in the Senate unless it includes border wall funding.
Well, what's been so ironic is that the Democrats and the leadership mentioned last week in the meeting with the president that they want to secure the border. yet they fail to define what border security means.
For us, it doesn't bother us what they want to call it. They can call it a wall. They can call it steel barriers. That doesn't matter to Border Patrol agents. As Border Patrol agents, we need a physical barrier out there so that we can protect our country, so that we can keep American people safe, and so that we can keep our Border Patrol agents safe as well.
Well, I'm one of many Democrats who has voted for and is willing to invest in border security. I do think we need to have secure borders. A lot of the fight we seem to be having now is over exactly how we will improve our border security.
It'll all work out. What we need a strong border. We have criminals coming in. We have human traffickers coming in. We have drugs pouring in. We have things happening that you don't want to even know about. And it's been that way for decades, and we can't have it anymore.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Hello. Welcome to the program. We're going to be speaking with Blair Ellis right after this segment. But right now, I want to go to the phones. We didn't go to the phones last segment of first hour, and so we'll go to the phones now. I also want to give you the information to call just before we go to the phones here. We have Mission Preborn going on this week, and we are so excited about saving babies' lives, and that goes on to generations. When a mom has an abortion, she literally cuts off a part of her family tree. There's an arm that is aborted. It's literally chopped off. And when a mom chooses life, that child goes on to do amazing things. And they don't all become famous, but I happen to know some kids who were like within just moments of being aborted, and then their mom made a different choice. And those people they bless my life to this day. They're not kids anymore, they're adults, but that's the beauty of supporting a ministry like Preborn that provides the ultrasound, that gives the mom a picture of what's growing in her tummy, that allows her to choose life and to hear the gospel. $28 provides one woman seeking an abortion with an ultrasound and gives her the opportunity to hear the gospel. 5 ultrasounds can be sponsored for just $140. You know you're there. You know you can afford to do it. Join with us by going to afr.net, the easy way. Click just a couple clicks and you're done. Or call in and speak to one of our fantastic volunteers who will help you through the process. 877-616-2396. 877-616-2396. We're so excited about doing this week. So join with us. Right now I want to go to the phones. Andy in Georgia. Andy, thanks for calling the show today.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You made a comment earlier in the last hour about, the lunatics. I don't even know how to describe the way the Democrats are acting, but, that it's all about power and control and maybe even money. But I won't say it is, except for the money part, but it's not a political power. It's more of a spiritual power because it's nothing but evil. Everything that they want is evil. All the evil to come into the country, the abortion thing, to kill kids and keeping the Christianity out of schools, it's just evil. And, I think Trump's doing a pretty good job, and he's done a lot of good stuff. I'm not against him, but I'm not exactly sold for him either because he still keeps a lot of stuff stirred up, and that's pushing people to the other side. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think we do need another president to come in there that's somebody kind of like you, maybe.
What? Oh, my gosh. Okay. Thank you, Andy, for your comment and for calling the show. First disclosure, I will never be running for president. Never, ever, 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 ever. And it would not be a job that I would want, and I am not equipped. I call it the crazy, stupid fine. If you watched Ant-Man, the movie, with your family, with your kids, you heard this. One of the characters says, this woman in the movie, he's telling a story, and he's telling it in this very animated way, and he starts to describe this woman, and he says, she's crazy, stupid fine. Well, I actually have taken that little phrase, that phraseology or description, and I apply that to people who are seeking the presidency. You have to have a set of qualities that is crazy, stupid, fine to be able to survive the gauntlet and onslaught that is the process of getting to the White House. And then once you get there, you have to have that crazy, stupid, fine. It's like a schmegagony, which is not a real word, but it's a word I use often here at home, and the kids always laugh at me. It's basically this odd cornucopia of skills and gifts and a desire. The first thing you have to have is you have to think that out of 320 some odd million people, you are the only one who can do that job, and that you are uniquely equipped to do it. And then you have to want to do it. in spite of everything that you're going to lose, and in spite of the benefits, because there are enormous benefits to becoming the president of the United States, and then afterwards, once you're no longer the president. I don't have that. I not only do not have the set of crazy, stupid, fine giftings that are required to do that job, I do not have the desire to do it. I don't even have the desire to be a local state elected official, which my husband and I have discussed on many occasions, me going into the state legislature. And I actually know I could do a good job at that particular position, House of Representatives or Senate, but I don't want to. I feel like out of all the things that I've prayed for and the path that I've been set upon, that this radio job is the place where I'm supposed to be. And it's pretty much the only outside the home type working opportunity that engages everything that I'm able to do while still keeping me in my house and able to serve my husband and our kids in the way that I feel God has called me to do. So, but there are others out there, I think, who are uniquely equipped and gifted to do that position. But right now we have President Trump, and you know, I've had some disappointing moments through his presidency, but I would with any president. There's never going to be a president who I'm going to be 100% happy with 100% of the time. But I think he's doing his best in the situation. I also think that some of the things that make him so uniquely qualified to do the job, his corresponding negative attributes are things that hurt him in certain ways. But they're also things that endear him to millions of Americans. The idea that he has no filter and that he says whatever is on his mind is something that endears him to millions of Americans. And so every one of his utterances may not be my cup of tea, but I understand there are millions of Americans who love it. They thrive on him speaking in the plain speak that they speak to these puffed up, overdressed elected people and these media types and individuals who think they exist to rule over us. So rather than second guess the comments or the tweets, because I think that's a waste of our time, I choose to look at what he's accomplished and what he's doing. And I think that the border remains the signature issue for him, and I want to see him win there, not because it's a win-lose like Democrats or Republicans, but because it's a win for Americans if we maintain our national sovereignty, and it is a loss for us if we do not. It's that simple. And it's also, as the caller said, I think it's a fantastic point to reiterate, that it is a good and evil type concept. It's a spirit of lawlessness against a spirit of what's right. And those two spirits will be warring until Christ cracks the sky open and returns to come and take us all with him. And so in knowing that, it is lawlessness. And wherever we see lawlessness as Christians, it is our duty to stand up against it. And so there's lawlessness in a lot of different areas of our society, but the border represents the most clear and present impending danger that we're under threat of. And that's why we focus on it so much here on the show. I do think President Trump is the right tool for the right job, and I'm glad he's there doing what he's doing. And we have to pray that he would be strengthened to be able to continue the fight, because he is under attack from every corner, and he has so few true allies which he can lean on. So there's that. Also, a housekeeping note. Last week, I read a portion of Doug Ross's open letter to the president about how to eliminate the deep state. How it's an open letter to the president, how you can take the fight to the deep state. And I read a part of it on air, and then I provided the link online. Well, there are some listeners, and God bless. I know where you're coming from. Not Facebook. These are listeners who do not have Facebook. And so what I did was I posted the letter at StaceyOnTheRight.com. So it's up there right now. You can find it right on the front page. Click on it, read it, and then, of course, in homage to the person who wrote it, you have to click through at the end and read the remainder of the letter. It's kind of lengthy, but it's worth it. He's teaching you things here that you probably didn't know about the Clintons. There's so much wrongdoing, books and books and books of wrongdoing by the Clintons. So you can read the article and click through to Doug Ross's site there and read it. And then all I ask is that you share this article. Share what he wrote so other people can learn, and maybe, hope against hope, this could make it to the president. He could find out these facts, which I know he's knowledgeable in a lot of areas, but not so much in politics, and he doesn't know everything about the Clintons. And I hope that he would read this letter and get something from it that could be useful for him in his fight to secure the $25 billion needed to finish the wall and other barriers at our southern border. So we had a little bit of information, as you know, what we're hearing from onenewsnow.com and other news outlets, of course, but the best one, onenewsnow.com, that the president is going to address the nation from the southern border. Well, this comes after a former director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement went on television and requested that the president do so. So here is that little bit of audio. He says, you've got to give a national address on the border invasion. It's number one.
Let me tell you what needs to happen. Since they shut down the secretary today, if the President of the United States is watching, I implore you to have a presidential address to the entire nation in prime time and share this data with the American people. They voted for you to secure this border. They need to hear this data on the criminals and the gangs and the drugs coming across this border. Go around, Nancy and Mr. Schumer. Talk to the American people. You will win their support.
He's right. And I'm so glad he said that on Fox, where the president had much more likelihood of hearing it. And now the president's going to do it. And the president needs to do more than just one address. I mean, we've talked here on the show. We had Lowell Ponte on the program talking to us about his piece where he says there are ways to fund a border wall. It's not just, and I'm just pausing here because I think sometimes we make things so hard. Are you with me? How many times can you look back in your own personal history and see where you had something that you needed to get done, and it might have even been like a health issue, or it might have been something financial, whatever. You had something you needed to get done. And so you went about getting it done. And it was like you're banging your head up against a wall. You just feel like there's no one to help you. There's no way to get it done. When the reality is the easiest way to get it done was right there in front of you the whole time. And once you've tried every other avenue and banged your head up against every wall, brick, fence, and piece of landscaping, retainer, you then realize the solution is simple. It's right here in front of me. And then you start down that path, and before you know it, it's accomplished. I feel like that's where we are with this wall thing. We've watched Congress kick this can down the road for 30 years. 30 years. We've allowed probably somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 40 million people into this country. I know everyone keeps saying, notice how they stopped saying 11 million. Now everyone's saying 22 million. You know, my thing is, there's no way it's only 22 million. Not with these numbers, not what we're spending, not with what we're seeing around the country. 10% of all drunk driving accidents are illegal immigrants. How could that be? 10% of all the drunk driving, that means almost every illegal immigrant in the country is drunk, or there are more of them than we're being told. Also, U.S. Census has this immigration question that they've put back on for the next time they go around. And all of the illegal immigrant states, the sanctuary city states, are like, we can't have that. They said now that it's optional. You don't have to answer that question when you do the census. Well, if you ask me, because they said it would disenfranchise people from getting proper representation. If they don't answer the question, then they don't get counted, and then your congressperson is apportioned to you by how many hundreds of thousands of people live in each district. So if there are 50,000 people living in a district, but they're not counted on the census, then they will have fewer representatives. You know, you need a certain number of people before you go over from one representative in the House to two for a specific, area. Well, why in the world would people who are here illegally be entitled to representation? I mean, I just don't understand what nincompoops are doing the thinking around these parts that we have an actual census form used to directly apportion congressional membership, and we're going to use illegal immigrants to help decide. Why wouldn't California let every illegal that they can find into the country? If they can increase the number of House representatives they get to go to Congress and then control power from there. Am I the only one who sees this? It's like, hello, Bueller, is anyone home? And I promise you, me knocking on this wooden desk is just like knocking on a liberal's head. That's what's going on here. They're literally selling citizenship and power to people who have no right to it because they're here illegally. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Blair Ellis. Stay right there.
When a young woman in crisis walks into a preborn pregnancy center, she's on a journey, and the Ministry of Preborn is there to help bring her journey to life.
Her name's Journey. She is the little peanut in my stomach. I'm glad I made the decision to keep her, even though it's life-changing, but it definitely changed my life for the best.
Preborn offers free ultrasounds to pregnancy centers nationwide. Because when a mom in crisis sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to choose life for her baby. Preborn and Urban Family Talk are partnering to help save 2,000 babies this week. Would you join us? For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your sponsorship goes to saving babies. To donate, dial 877-616-2396 or visit afr.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
One thing the government shutdown has done is to remind us how big government is today and how many government employees there are. When just a quarter of the government shuts down and thousands of non-essential employees are sent home, you realize how large the federal government has grown. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to interview Senator Jim DeMint about his book that warned how the bigs were taking away our liberty. Those would be big government, big business, and big labor. Let's look at the federal government. The federal budget last year was $4 trillion. The president and Congress are supposed to manage a bureaucracy with more than 4.8 million employees if you count military, civilian, and contract employees. No one in history has ever managed such a large organization. Yes, the current president has managed a large company, but it pales in comparison to these numbers. And remember that the previous president had really never managed anything and whose previous experience was as a junior senator. To put this in comparison, let's look at the 2 largest companies in the Fortune 500. Walmart employs 2.1 million people worldwide, and about 1.4 million of them are in the United States. Its annual revenue is $482 billion. Amazon employs just 500,000 people worldwide with annual revenue about $177 billion. If Walmart or Amazon were part of the federal government, they wouldn't even be the largest federal programs. Perhaps the difference in scale between the federal government and the major U.S. corporations helps illustrate why so many people believe it is too big and too inefficient. When we see non-essential federal employees sent home, you can't blame some of us for wondering whether some of them should stay home permanently. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being here. Hit the subscribe button at stacyontheright.com, urbanfamilytalk.com, and afr.net, the site for American Family Radio. We are so glad to be with you on 180 plus terrestrial radio stations and live streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we're in 32 states, 800 communities, and we are really excited about being with you today. Right now, I want to welcome Blair Ellis. He is coming to us straight from the RNC. Kind of short notice. I'm so glad he was able to carve out some time for us because the president's going to address the border and address the nation from the border. And this is so important, but we need details. Blair, thank you for coming on.
A pleasure is all mine. And yes, I am so looking forward to tomorrow night with the president's address. I think it's going to be very encouraging to hear directly from him. But he's made clear he's not going to move forward unless there's funding for the border, and that includes a barrier for the border. And so we're going to need Chuck and Nancy to come to the table and to seriously put forth some items that they're willing to negotiate on, because all we've seen thus far is them kind of sitting on their hands and hanging out from the sidelines. So hopefully tomorrow night will knock some sense into the Democrats and encourage them to play ball.
Okay, Blair, you're encapsulating my thoughts exactly. I can't wait to hear the president off the cuff. I mean, I know he has some really important information that he's going to share, and I'm sure that will be, prepared remarks. But he's also going to go off teleprompter, off script, and he's going to speak from his heart about why he's so concerned about our border being open. And I think one of the things it's so important about you coming on today, and anytime we have guests on to discuss this issue, is that we're actually dealing in truth and facts here about what's happening at the border. So many Americans who only watch mainstream television are learning things that aren't true, like hardly any people are crossing, the people who are coming in are the most law-abiding in the country, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think the president's going to lay into those, I know he knows the talking points. I know he sometimes is forced to listen to CNN. I know he knows what's going on. Will he cover that too?
I think so. I think we'll see it and hear a lot tomorrow, which is good. And to your point about how we dabble in facts, Republicans do at least. That's something that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have really refused to do. They refuse to accept facts outlined by DHS Secretary Nielsen last week. Nancy Pelosi was very quick to kind of hush Secretary Nielsen. But there's no question that Trump's approach to border security is effective. We know that walls and physical barriers work. They are proven to significantly boost border security. They are proven to deter illegal immigration. And we see the numbers along the border with San Diego, with El Paso, with Tucson. We've seen illegal traffic drop by as much as 90%. I think that we can definitely anticipate President Trump bringing forth a lot of those very pertinent statistics tomorrow night, and also probably outlining some of the other asks included in the government spending package that he hopes to see Democrats agree to, pertaining to border barriers, law enforcement personnel, humanitarian needs, et cetera. I really think tomorrow night will be an all-encompassing speech, if you will.
Okay, so quick question from the, because I've seen a few emails flying about from some of the organizations that are very strong on border security, and they're talking about the fact that there may be some capitulation on amnesty for DACA recipients. And we've also had some hardcore conservative guests on who've mentioned that most Americans are fine with some form of lawful, staying here for DACA recipients, whether it's they become citizens or whether they're given permanent work permits or permanent residency status, whatever. Most Americans are in favor of that. Now, I know that when I hear most Americans, that sounds like a Democrat talking point. There's no most Americans on almost anything. But I personally, while I hate the idea of amnesty, would be willing to trade DACA, so 700,000 of them, not 3.4 million, 700,000 of them, they get the amnesty or whatever it is that they hash out. But in exchange, we end chain migration and we get the wall, all 25 billion. What's the chance of him laying that out tomorrow?
I think everything is on the table. Amnesty obviously not being on the table, but everything else is. I think we saw where President Trump stood on DACA and his desire to end chain migration last January. It feels like we're kind of living in a twilight zone because this is a very similar conversation that we held this time last year when we were in the midst of the Schumer shutdown, or kind of closely approaching the Schumer shutdown in January. But we know that the president has some boxes that have to be checked when it comes to immigration reform, but we know that at the foremost of this process is a border barrier, period. And he means business when he says that. That's something that's a very important sticking point to him. But we also know that he desires to see an increase in law enforcement personnel. ICE needs additional personnel to help kind of enforce immigration laws, combat gang violence, stop drug smugglers, et cetera. We know that Customs and Border Patrol agents could use a few more hands on deck as well to keep the border safe and secure. And there's also, not to be forgotten in the midst of all this politicking, humanitarian needs. There's absolutely a crisis at the border. It's not just a talking point that we hear spun by Republicans. It's a serious thing. We need money to enhance medical support, transportation, supplies, et cetera, temporary facilities, et cetera. Those, I think, are all going to be, benchmarks that President Trump would like to see laid out in an agreement made with Democrats moving forward. And again, I think if Democrats would take off their politicking hat for just a minute, we could see that these are really common sense things that Trump is asking for that are widely agreed upon by Americans across both sides of the aisle.
I mean, I can't agree with you more. When you talk about widely agreed upon, 68% of people in Missouri, now that we are in the heartland, we're a very conservative state, but we have huge pockets of liberals. So to get to 68% on anything, that means you have some Democrat participation. 68% of Missourians want to see less lawful immigration. That came out about a year ago, not quite a year ago. I wrote about it for the Kansas City Star. It was such a shocking bit of information, but when you look at the numbers from the survey, it's real. People are actually concerned that we're doing too much lawful immigration too fast, and then they're also concerned about the illegal immigration. So two different sides of the same issue, but there's a consensus across the country that if Jane Q. Public needs to follow the law, obey the speed limit, not drive drunk, then Johnny from Guatemala needs to not enter the country illegally. It's a trade-off. People are kind of like normal people recognize that.
Totally. And I think that you speak to the point of the law of the land. I mean, if people want to come into our country, they have to abide by the rules on the books. There are proper rules and procedures in place that one must go through in order to legally immigrate into the country. And I think that President Trump made some really valid points last year and into this year as well about the need to curb chain migration, to make sure that our processes and policies in place are modernized, that we're not just going along with past precedent simply because it's what we call past precedent. It's important that we make note of demographic changes and fluctuations in our country from year to year, and that we adjust policies accordingly. And again, I think that speaks to how President Trump isn't somebody that just goes by what's automatically been done in the past. He's looking to reform, update, and create some new policies and put new laws in place. But again, I think that it's important tomorrow's speech, that primetime address. I think we're going to learn a lot. I think we're going to hear some really important facts and figures that hopefully, again, we can get some Democrats to open their ears and listen to. But at the end of the day, we know that this is a big priority for the American people. It's a big priority for the president, and he's not going to let up on it.
I'm so glad that I know we just played a little bit of audio from a former director of ICE who was on, I believe he was on Fox, and he was saying, look, we need the president to go to the border and make an address, and now here we see the president's going to do that. I think it's an excellent strategy for the president because he is much more effective when he's speaking himself as opposed to, having other people who are great at what they do, but they're on television talking to much smaller audiences. This is something that people are going to tune into. And, 9 p.m. Eastern, that means you're done driving kids for soccer. You're done with everything. You're back home. You can watch this. And they'll have it on the radio for people to listen to. Is there anything that you're specifically hoping that he's going to say tomorrow to bring the American people to his side? Because the Democrats aren't going to come willingly, but the American people, I think, can be convinced.
I think, again, he's going to hit the same points that he has hit, which is that truly border security, it should be non-political. I mean, it truly used to be an apolitical topic. For whatever reason, I think Democrats with their very left and liberal base have realized they have to really scoot to the left on this to try and appease their people. And it's a shame because it comes at the expense of securing Americans. It comes at the expense of keeping America safe. And that's a shame. But I think when you look at the numbers, the stats, the figures for what they are, you realize how common sense and necessary enforcing border security is, enhancing our technology, improving law enforcement personnel. I think all of those, again, are things that seem very common sense to us, to Republicans, because we put facts first. But I think that is something we'll really hear the president take a deeper dive into tomorrow night. And I also anticipate President Trump's visit to the border on Thursday to also produce some really pertinent conversations. I think that anytime you can get any public elected official down to the border to really see the crisis firsthand, I think it really resonates with you. I think you really have some personal stories that you can take back and carry to mainstream America, that you can carry to the networks. And I think that, again, will be something that the American people, both on the left and the right, will truly benefit from hearing.
I couldn't agree more. Blair, I'm hopeful that no matter what people are bringing to listening to this, because we all walk in with our presuppositions and our, we believe this, we believe that. I'm hoping that when they see him speaking from the heart about what he wants to do at the border, that they'll hear the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces and our military, and also the President of the United States, talking about saving American lives and protecting Americans. We're already sending the humanitarian aid. There's not much more we can do in the way of supporting these poorer countries, but they can all come here. And I'm hopeful that tomorrow night's going to be a pivotal moment in changing minds and getting some movement here, because we need that money.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I'm gonna keep fingers and toes crossed, but hopefully common sense again will prevail.
Perfect. Well, I know you are busy on the trail of spreading the message about the event tomorrow night. I'm calling it an event because I think it's going to be a big deal. Blair, Ellis, thank you for taking some time for us today, coming in from the Republican National Committee. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure was all mine.
Okay. Talk to you again soon. We are just moving on through the program today, and I'm so excited about getting a chance to speak to Blair. I'm with the sentiment is I think we're all on the same page here. We all have the same mind. We want to see the president do well tomorrow night. And I encourage you, you know, prayer warriors, my Annas, my people who you go to the Lord regularly, I'm asking you to please remember, make it tonight over your dinner meal, to pray for the president and wisdom and courage to be able to handle this challenging speaking engagement he's going to have tomorrow night from the border. It's going to be on in prime time. And I just encourage you, please be praying over him, lift him up, and also his staff and the people who surround him, that everyone would be wise and on their game. You know, he's got great people there, and he has experts. And, you know, Stephen Miller is the expert on illegal immigration in this country that's in the Trump cabinet. And he writes amazing speeches. So we know the knowledge base is there. But it's more than that. When you have the president speaking to Americans about this issue, it has to be that he touches their hearts. The Democrats always talk about how they're so good at storytelling. And the truth is they are, because as you and I know, storytelling can have many different meanings. The primary meaning, obviously, is that you are telling stories. Most often, adults telling stories to children to entertain them and to teach them lessons. But storytelling also has another meaning, and you know which one I'm talking about. It's when you're telling stories. You're intentionally lying to people. You're telling them stories that aren't true. Storytelling. Well, we need our president to combat the storytelling of lies that is going on in the media right now with the truth about what's happening at our southern border. And we need that to be an effective, direct, and heartwarming message about stopping crime, eliminating human trafficking, protecting minors of every nationality, and specifically maintaining America's sovereignty. So these are important issues for us to pray that the president would be able to work his way through tomorrow evening. So please join with me in doing that over your dinner meal tonight. You don't have to do it out loud. You know, if you're at a restaurant, but I want to tie it to the dinner meal because that will help us remember to do it. And then now I want to get back to, so I have this audio mashup from the Free Beacon, and it is the Democrat Impeachment Caucus. And I think looking at the clock, we're going to go out with it. It is such a hilarious bit of audio because it's all of them talking about their favorite dream, their favorite unicorn fancy, impeaching the president's number 4.
And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I say, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
We know is that Democrats want impeachment and that it is a spur for them to go to the poll.
I say impeach 45 and they go nuts and they agree.
I've been pushing impeachment since July of 2017 when I introduced articles, and it's going to take many months of additional work before we have the country mobilized to move forward.
I said he should be impeached, and they said don't use that word.
I don't think we can deal with the real issues facing Americans until we get rid of a dramatically reckless, dangerous, and lawless president and get on with our lives.
And he certainly can be accused of collusion, and I think it's going to be proven.
And even if there's nothing in the Mueller report, the president is guilty of violating Section 1512b3 of the Federal Criminal Code.
Descriptions of what would happen if we move to impeach Trump are basically excuses. Excuses because, you know, maybe they don't want to fail at it.
We're looking at an administration that disagrees profoundly with the way Californians see the world.
Democrats, I don't care what the Republicans say. I say impeach 45.
And he really is an incredibly skillful and talented communicator. He really is. Which Hitler was too. He hasn't killed millions of people. And so, I agree. Look, that's why we want to impeach him. We'd like to end it here.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, yeah, that's the way they talk about the president. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We'll be back right after this.
Yo, what up, Sid?
Yo, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Man, I'm good, bro. Just left the club, you know, the usual.
The club? Man, them clubs don't love back, man. You ain't learned yet. You better slow down, dude.
Ah, come on, Sid. You remember those days. We used to turn up together, man.
Used to, brother. I'm on something much different.
Like what, though? I mean, that Jesus music you be rapping about, or beatboxing, or whatever you be doing.
I'm saying, though, that's how I worship. God gave me rap, so I give it back.
Why, though? Gospel rap is boring, man.
Boring? There's nothing boring about the ransom that ransomed me with himself. Took me off the shelf to transform me into my best. Surrounding me with those of like minds. He drops bombs, some of which is found on urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Whenever a power-hungry activist wants to infringe upon religious liberty, they refer to the separation of church and state, an evil concept created by an activist judge to limit Christian participation in public life. While God does limit the spheres of influence controlled by the church and state, his limitations lead to more liberty. God is head over all and is unsurprised by the goings-on in our society and politics. He has ordained that free men would control their homes, the church, and the state. There is no separation. When godly men rule, the people rejoice. But when evildoers control a nation, citizens groan and wail. There is no substitute for the proper order of our lives and government under God's planning and direction. When Christians pull back, evil flourishes. The Bible mandates Christian influence in government, politics, and public life. It's up to us. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
This is Poll Paris with Fox News Director of Polling, Dana Blanton.
Several hot survey nuggets this week. First, Mitt Romney, the former GOP presidential candidate and newly installed Utah senator, made headlines with an op-ed critical of President Trump. That should please most of his constituents. Our Fox News voter analysis shows about 2/3 of Utah voters, 63%, want Romney to stand up to the president. Next, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has the gavel again. More voters view her negatively than positively. Still, she's more popular than her peers. 36% have a favorable opinion of Pelosi. It's 28% for both Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Now, one from the archive. In August 2017, less than 1 voter in 5 supported both a border wall and a government shutdown to pressure Congress to fund it. And at that time, a 41% minority of Trump voters favored both the wall and the shutdown to get it. I'm Dana Blanton, and that's your Poll Paris.
You can download episodes of Stacey on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We're going to be discussing the president's decision to withdraw, but to do so from northeast Syria in a way that makes sure that ISIS is defeated and is not able to revive itself and become a threat again, and to make sure that the defense of Israel and our other friends in the region is absolutely assured, and to take care of those who have fought with us against ISIS and other terrorist groups. You know, it's for the United States, a sovereign nation's ability to defend itself is the ultimate mark of sovereignty. And President Trump has said repeatedly that he backs Israel's right to self-defense. He says it proudly and unequivocally. And I would just say to any nation, whether in this region or not in this region, that has any doubt about America's support for Israel's self-defense, they better think about it again.
What you're listening to, the voice of John Bolton, reconfirming the U.S. support of Israel's right to self-defense. And this is coming on the heels of, obviously, they're doing a lot of threatening posturing. There's a lot going on in the Middle East that pertains to Israel, but all we ever hear about are the things that have to do with our troop deployments and obviously ISIS. We hear a lot of drama from people who support the Palestinians, but we never hear anything from the perspective of Israel, because the national media, they really treat Israel like the stepchild of the Middle East. And they are our ally, and he's reaffirming that because people need to know and understand we're still allies with Israel, and we value their safety and their ability to protect themselves. So I love that he reiterated that. Before we go on a little bit more, I have a couple things for you. First off, we're going to go to the phones. Don't forget, that we are doing preborn partnership this week, and we're so excited about it. I love the work that pregnancy resource centers do, and it is wonderful to have them be able to rely on a partner such as Preborn Ministries to be able to provide ultrasounds, which it's the clincher for these young women when they're in the throes of decision, trying to figure out what to do. So you have $28. If you donate $28, that gives one woman who's seeking an abortion a free ultrasound so she can make a decision that will impact her for the rest of her life. $140 gives 5 free ultrasounds, and 100% of what you give goes directly to these ultrasounds. None of it is in overhead or anything like that. And I think it's fantastic that preborn centers have counseled 340,000 women considering abortion, saving 73,600 lives. That's fantastic. 100% of your donation goes directly to the pregnancy centers. We're providing the ultrasounds. You can call 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net and donate there online. Please partner with us this week. We are looking for your assistance. We're trying to save 2,000 babies this week, and we know we can do it. So let's get to the phones. Kelly in Alabama, thank you for calling the show today.
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I have two, points. When we pray for President Trump, also pray for his safety.
Mm-hmm.
I find it, I'm glad he's going to be there, but it's disconcerting to me that, I just want to make sure he's safe because there's so much hate for him. And also, I heard him say earlier when he was talking about the border and stuff, somebody was playing back what he had said. And he was talking about there's just horrific things that happen there that we don't want to know about. Maybe that needs to be out there. Maybe somebody needs to start printing some kind of, I don't know, for your information at the border kind of paper, leaflet or flyer or something, and showing the hard things that we can't face, what's really going on. That's just all.
You know what, Kelly? Let's face it. If you turn on TV at night, especially the streaming services have now, I just noticed Amazon now they have a rating system, and if you watch something that's TV mature, it will have, sections that are pornographic in it. It will have the regular and frequent use of the worst curse words, the ones that you're not allowed to say on radio. If we can put up with that drama, surely we can learn what the worst possible things are that are going on at the border. You are so right. I think, Kelly, he should describe it in detail. He should get on the television and tell every American when he says it's disgusting and it's frightening and it's horrifying, he should describe it. He should spend as long as it takes. If it's from 9 to 10:30, an hour and a half of nothing but the goriest details, how many people have been raped, sexually assaulted, sold into sexual slavery, what the ramifications are afterwards, how many of them are in our country illegally, how many are at the border every single day, crossing over without any supervision, turning themselves into border agents, all of it. You and I know it because we're the tip of the spear for information, but most Americans have no idea. I agree with you. We should be praying not just for his safety, but the president would be unleashed and just share all of the information. Yeah, because Americans can take it. If they can watch 50 Shades of Grey and all these, Walking Dead, Living Dead, whatever the name of that show is, if you can watch all that, you can certainly learn what's happening at the border.
That's right. Well, just appreciate all you do, and I thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for calling the show today. Kelly has a fantastic point. I mean, why would we withhold that information from those who are currently being told that most illegal immigrants are visa overstays? That's not true. 40% is not most. 60% of illegal immigrants come across our southern border. If 60% of your customers or your anti-customers came from any one location, if they were anti-customers, you'd put a stop to it. And if they were customers, you'd figure out a way to open the border up a little wider, which is why we have this big fight. The Democrats see illegal immigrants as customers, future voters. And the Republicans see these as people who have been convinced wrongly that the way to get into America is to come illegally. And the answer is to put a stop to it. I can't stress how much the Democrats they're making this short-sighted decision, which is, it's folly. When people engage in folly, they do things that for the short term appear to be to their benefit, but long term are to their detriment. So obviously, I've said before, I haven't changed my mind about it, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, people like that who make $179,000 a year through, working for as elected officials, it's not that they make, that's a lot of money, but that's not the money that's making them rich. It's the insider trading and investments and the opportunities that they get from these lobbyists and all that. That's how they get rich. That's how they go in, they're worth $800,000 and they come out and they're worth, $48 million, or like Nancy Pelosi, hundreds of millions. It's opportunity and influence peddling. And so what they're doing is they're saying, well, I can influence America and voters in a certain way that maintains my power. But Nancy Pelosi isn't going to live forever. Neither is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. No one is. No one's going to live forever. So whether you make it to 100 or 120 or you're out of here at 88, it doesn't matter. You ain't living forever. So the ramifications of the decisions that elected Democrats are making will fall on my children and yours when English as a second language no longer becomes a thing because English is the second language. Do you understand what I said just then? Right now, we teach immigrants English as a second language because English is the language that is spoken here in America. But Spanish-speaking people don't normally move to another country and forsake Spanish. What they do is they influence that culture to add Spanish to everything so they don't have to read another language, which means that they will be, they're already doing it. There are already signs in multiple different languages, and they'll say, well, we need to do that. No, people who are here need to learn to speak English. Most developed nations, English is the primary language that they learn outside of their own language. They learn to speak their mother tongue, and then they learn English because they want to be able to communicate with Americans and read American books, literature, plays, art, whatever, technical manuals. They want to be able to go to school in an American-speaking country like England or America. So we don't need to change our country to suit people who are here illegally. We need to stop them from coming in, and we need to maintain our English-speaking Anglo-Saxon heritage, Judeo-Christian values, constitutionally protected rights, America. That's what it has to be our primary concern. So the vice president talked a little bit about the border wall funding negotiations. And I want to listen to that clip, and then I want to turn to a topic that has nothing to do with immigration, which I thought was a pretty interesting story. So I dug it out for today, and I'm going to close out the show with it. But first, let's go to Pence. It's number 3.
Ever since the Christmas holiday, the president sent us to Capitol Hill. I met with Senator Schumer not once but twice. We engaged in good faith negotiations. The president and I canceled all of our Christmas vacation plans. We were here in Washington, D.C. Democrats broke off negotiations about a week ago, but the president's made it clear. We're here to make a deal, but it's a deal that's going to result in achieving real gains on border security, and you have no border security without a wall. We will have no deal without a wall.
Okay. So I love that it's being reiterated all over the place, and we have an opportunity. The opportunity, honestly, the best opportunity was before the Democrats took back the House. The Republicans should have been made by hook or by crook with arm twisting and arm breaking to get into a room and hash out some kind of comprehensive immigration reform, including the end of chain migration, everything. And then they should have gotten in rooms with those Democrat senators and made 10 of them defect, the way they've been able to do with Republicans in the past. They should have forced it. But they just were too busy having fun. They're too busy jet-setting around the country and golfing. They're too busy buying those $5,000 outfits. They're too busy influence peddling and spending all of their ill-gotten gains. I said it. I don't even care anymore. I've stopped caring about whether or not this makes me popular or whether I'm going to be able to get Senator this or that on the show. We have interviewed Senator Mike Lee and others. I know Roy Blunt. Senator Roy Blunt is my senator. I know him. I've met Senator Hawley. He's now Senator Hawley. Met them. This isn't, I refuse to not tell the truth here for the privilege of having people come on the show. I don't even know if they're listening to the show, if they know that that I'm saying these things. That it's irrelevant whether they know or not. The truth has to win out. It has to. It's time for us to stop idolizing them and seeing them as these kind of people that are high and lifted up, and to recognize that they were great on the campaign trail, but once they get there, what are they doing? They're not doing what they promised. All right, let's go to the phones. We've got Marlon in Mississippi.
Hi, Stacey. Marlon from Michigan.
Michigan. I never know which ones they are. Welcome to the show.
It's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Hi. You know, Stacey, I love your show. You know, and your good resource for information. But I'll make it quick because it's close to the end.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, what was I going to say? I think that I don't know that the Democrats would fund the wall, because to me it would hand the president a victory.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that would cost them the 2020 election, you know, because if they give him that, then, you know, he would have more accomplishments that he could say that he did, and even with a Democrat Congress. So, you know, if they remain a Democrat Congress, then, you know, it wouldn't matter. And then I think that it wouldn't matter with him retaining his presidency, being reelected. And then the second thought was that it's also spiritual, just like one of the other callers said.
Yes.
You know, just because it is.
You make two great points. Two fantastic points. Marlon, I really appreciate the call. I have to say, when you talk about giving them a win, that's the last place I go. Like, that is the last thing I think about, because I'm just not a political animal in that way. The horse trading, they got to win on that. They got to, the Democrats are very much, that's the way they think. They think about things in the win-loss column, as opposed to, let's say immigration and the war that's being waged by communist China on our southern border, where they're bringing in the illicit drugs, and those drugs are killing Americans. And so, when I hear 70,000 dead Americans, I think that's a loss. But to the Democrats, those are acceptable losses, because the open border is a win for them. So it's not even about whether or not they believe it's right. We know that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, all of them have voted for different iterations of walls, barriers, more border protection. They voted for all of it before, as recently as just a few years ago. So it's not that. But as he just pointed out, when you talk about win-lose, then it becomes a totally different conversation. It becomes a conversation, to be honest with you, that I can't deal in those terms. Dead Americans, to me, they're not acceptable losses. This isn't a war. We're not talking about troops who signed up and said, I'll give my life for this, I'll give my life for the country. We're talking about Americans getting duped into, taking drugs that addict them on the first try. It's not the same thing to me. And if you're voting for the Democrats, you're voting for that power seeking. You're aligning yourself with the lawlessness that they're peddling right now. How about those apples? All right, that's the show. God bless you from the Heartland, citizens. We'll be back with you tomorrow.